All right. So, welcome back. Then continuing part of this series on marriage, and I'm specifically focusing on how I got to my sort of new point of view and our experience with counseling based on the traditional therapeutic model, even though it was Christian. And so, if you want to go back to some of my other videos on why I believe the therapeutic model will actually not work, and there's increasing research that it can actually make it worse, I thought I would start this with my own story. So let's take a look. And so what is this graph here? So this is a timeline. So this is a period from here to here, so about 12 years from the time before I got married till now. And we'll sort of show at the critical point sort of like the nature and the stages of counseling. And here is the marital health. And you can define that in obviously lots of different ways. But obviously the direction that you want to go is you want to go up. We know that reality is probably coming down against some kind of baseline. But in general, you want to go up, right? And especially if your baseline is at the point that you got married or even while in the premarital phase. I'm like, that's maybe baseline. Maybe in, some situations you kind of want to just hope that you can get back up there. I think if I were sort of working with a married couple, I would say, look, this is the arc that you want to go. It's probably going to dip for sure, but you want to be heading sort of up here such that even if you have a major dip, right, you're still above your baseline, which is when you started. Now, that might be very aspirational, but let's take a look at what you don't want, which is you really don't want something like this. And you'll see that that looks like mine. So let's take a look now at the nature of the counseling. So even before we got married, we worked with premarital. So we worked with the same person who is a pastor, marriage coach, and counselor. And so we just combined all those. It was somebody who's married, and I actually knew him from years before. So by this point, I knew him for about a decade. So I felt, okay, there's a lot of freedom and awareness of me, myself. And so let's do that, right? So we started with the premarital, and then we got married, and I did something very novel, which was, or to me was novel, was, hey, let's just do a check-in. Every 3 months, we're going to do a check-in. It'll allow us to surface in a safe space. It'll allow someone from an outside perspective to bring in, hey, how are these following things going? And I thought that would be really good. I would still recommend that to people. But obviously, we'll see what ended up happening. And so here you can kind of see there were some slow burn issues. I wanted to bring them up. They were actually a little bit quashed, and it just kind of like descended. She then brought up her issue, and I said, okay, we'll fix it, Again, this was not brought up any time earlier. It was super escalated, very heated conversation, yelling, crying. And so I was like, okay, I'll fix it. So I found a problem. It was brought to light, which is the way these things are supposed to work. This didn't get addressed, and then it contributed to this. This was starting to build up, and so this caused a huge problem in the marriage, right? So then we just kind of floundered on our own, and then I was like, we just have to have a marriage counselor pretty quickly. So we went back to him. We met weekly. He then said, let's move bi-weekly, and then move to monthly, and then stop altogether, in which case we worked with traditional separate counseling. This actually accelerated us things going down. We did not see movement. We stopped talking altogether. We never brought up these issues. I actually think some things in it brought out more negative things. Then I just resumed individual counseling back with the pastor, and it just sort of, and my own work, I started to do like a lot of my own work here to like lessen the pain. But remember, the marital health needs to be impacted. So while I could endure more things and sort of floundered around trying to figure out what can I do, things that I didn't seem to have impact, they weren't received well. we were sort of like continued to be in that mode. So taking a look and pulling back, we had a lot of marriage counseling throughout this whole process, except when we stopped meeting together, which I would say was not a good move. We just stopped and we've never returned. Like, this continues. There's been no joint meeting. I continue to do this, and then she's found somebody to sort of do her own somewhere around in this time frame. Clearly it's not changing. The same issues that were brought up continue. So if you were to look at this and zoom back and look at this as a protocol of anything else, a health doctor. Your doctor comes in, you're healthy, you're doing it, and then your health starts to go further down, and you're still being checked in. He's saying, okay, well, let me check on you. Well, let me decrease it. Well, let's stop meeting for a period. And it just, you would look at that protocol if it were a doctor and say that something isn't right. The direction isn't right, the frequency, and then the nature of the ongoing treatment isn't right. If you were looking at someone who is a tutor or an instructor, and that how well were they doing against sort of, at school, and this was sort of the nature of the protocol, and it just kind of got worse. You'd be like, something's wrong. And so we're going through that right now. We're doing a postmortem. It just got to such a negative place. We gotta say, okay, what happened? What is missing? What got missed? Because it's just a constant negative. And I've thought through it, and I'm going to start sharing my framework for what was missing, and is it repairable when it's just one side? And I think right now it's just a one-side thing. And there are plenty of people say, oh, if you just work on yourself, it'll fix it. I think that goes to some degree, but not if it's just one-sided. I think there are cases where it can, and lots of use cases where it is, but not in mine. And I'm going to share what I think that difference potentially could be. So we're going to try looking at that. But I think the takeaway, if you're looking at this, is lots of counseling, super early, super proactive. Most people wait for the crisis and then it comes in. And I thought, well, at least we'll have built up knowledge and insight. We'd be proactive. But it didn't work. And so it could either be, ours was so dysfunctional that this thing would have accelerated to this point sooner had we not gotten there. So there's that thesis. This thing was just so bad it was going down here. It just delayed it. It delayed the inevitable. In which case, I'm kind of like, but that doesn't sound like it really helped. Like if a doctor said, look, I see that you have an infection and I'm going to be able to prevent it from abscessing it so that you don't die as soon. That's not the same as I'm going to identify an infection. It's, before it comes in, and we're going to stem it, and then you're going to be healed, and then obviously the preferred cases, and your health will be better. You will have more energy. You will have better sleep, all that, right? So that's not really like that's like its best case scenario is, we delayed it from reaching this current point. That's its best case scenario. Its worst case is this contributed to it. There is something else that's going on, and the nature of things contributed to it. Like, for example, this accelerant. Was this an accelerant? So I think that really addressing underneath the dimensions of what's going on is the way to start asking the higher order picture is, what is the root of the practice? Many things people say, there's lots of different counselors, lots of things, but I think I'm going to look at the concept, which we'll talk about, of lineage. Is the manner in which this is done, whether it's within a church or outside, at fault? Like, there's something missing. Now, the flip side is people can say, but there's a lot of people that went to it and it's fine. And then the question, I think, is are there certain preconditions where the nature of it does help? And I think there is. And I think without understanding that, we're going to give this more credit, or because it's missing an understanding of the whole dynamic, it's actually going to make it worse. So put in the comments questions if you want to know more, maybe how you relate to this. If you have a question and you're able to actually ask questions within the rating, so if it's on a podcast, you put the rating, and then you can ask a question, and I can update future content based on that. All right. Talk to you soon.